just feel like I've been around the block, ripping up fantasy stock, working around the clock. Look at the view from the top. Researching rookies a lot? No, I just be listening to pods. Yeah, one in particular, I'm just a messenger. Let me just pass on the rock. Browning, brunning, pruning, pronouncing ain't what he's doing. What he's doing is not losing, but infusing you with new things. And there's Dennis the Bennett, yeah. The man is a menace, yeah. Building a dynasty, some of the finest things. Promise you, you won't regret it. Sly as a fox, cultured in pop. Give him his props. Here is a thought, here is a box. And you cannot compare them at all, so don't even try. Careful with the news, but when you use a take, I take up Tony Fire, I mean Dyer, because anyone else is a huge mistake. Whoa, fantasy round table, fantasy round table, yeah. Fantasy round table, come take a look at the crown, baby. Hey, fantasy round table, fantasy round table, woo. Fantasy round table, come take a look at the crown, baby. Go.
Hello and welcome to another episode of the Fantasy Football Roundtable Podcast. It is Friday, September 6th, and we have something we have not had in these many months, and that is a full preview for a full week of regular season NFL action. Plus, we get to recap a game that took place last night, and in less than 65 minutes, we are going to see another meaningful football game. It is a blissful time of year. Dennis, are you excited?
Man, I'm fired up. Got the Monster Energy drink, not a sponsor. Hey, check us out, reach out.
Yeah, not a sponsor, but we are fans. So,
it was a really good game. This couple disappointing performances, but week one. The way teams prepare for the season now with the 17-game season, and I can only imagine what it's going to be like when they go to an 18-game season. More and more teams are not going to play their stars. It's going to take a week or two for people to get going. Not very efficient in the ground game. Some nice games in the passing, on the passing side of things. And a couple guys that we really expected more from that just didn't deliver.
Yeah, so let's dive in to last night's game. The Kansas City Chiefs winning 27-20. A little bit of controversy on the last play. As time ran out, Lamar Jackson hit Isaiah Likely in the back of the end zone, was originally called a touchdown. That would have made it 27-26. John Harbaugh had already indicated he was going to go for two, so there would have been no overtime, either a win or a loss. But as replay showed, toe came down on the white, just barely. The toenails came down on the white, maybe, and it was ruled incomplete, and that gave the Chiefs a victory. So pretty impressive game. We had some impressive performances. People we thought would do well. Rashee Rice, 7 for 103. Patrick Mahomes was pretty good, 291, touchdown. Did have an interception, but not too bad. Lamar Jackson threw for 273, a touchdown, ran for 122. Derrick Henry gets a touchdown, kind of helps his day because he was only able to get 13 carries, only 46 yards. But we'll start with the Ravens first. A couple of surprising performances. Justice Hill used a lot more than maybe we expected, got 8 targets, caught 6 for 52. But their big receiver was Isaiah Likely, who saw 12 targets, a team high, 2 more than Zay Flowers, who was the next closest with 10. Had 9 receptions, 111 yards, and a touchdown, as we mentioned, could have been bigger. Meanwhile, Mark Andrews, I think it was a little under the radar that he had that car accident. He never was out or seriously injured, but they kept saying he had barely started returning to practice this week. Only saw 2 targets, 2 catches for 14 yards. Did have a couple of plays where he caught the ball and it was reversed on penalties. Very fascinating that the Ravens got so many illegal formation penalties when Jawan Taylor hasn't lined up on the line of scrimmage in a decade, but we will let that pass. There's a lot of consternation today that Mark Andrews' career is over and Isaiah Likely is the guy going in. For my part, I felt going into the season Likely was going to have a role and might actually be playable week to week, and that Andrews would have a role and would still be a good play week to week. And after one game, I'm not panicking. I still think that's true of both players, but are you feeling differently?
No, I mean Andrews outsnapped him 59-53. So Andrews was out there. It just didn't go his way. And the Ravens have a couple more weapons than they have in the past. I mean, there have been years when it was literally Lamar Jackson and Mark Andrews, and that was the offense. So, you got a couple more guys. There has been a little bit of a steady buildup for Justice Hill. Derrick Henry, we've seen him catch the ball and run far with it on passes, but he's not really a pass catcher. I think they're gonna grind him and let him run the ball. I don't think he had 2 targets yesterday, and they were of the dump off variety. Justice Hill, if he's gonna get 5 to 8 targets a game, I think he's going to be a flex-worthy player. I will say, though, I did not have the battle of the backup tight ends on my bingo card for week 1.
Well, I will say, too, like if you watch the replay of Likely's touchdown, it's not that it isn't a good play, but if you watch Mark Andrews, who was in the slot, he goes up and peels over, and there's a triangle of 3 Chiefs defenders over him while the guy that was kind of trailing Likely fell off. I'm thinking after this huge week 1, people are going to moderate their coverage a little bit more. But when you looked at a lot of the plays where Andrews was going out, it's not like he was wide open. I think the same thing of we'll get to Kansas City now. Travis Kelce, obviously only 3 receptions for 34. His backup, Noah Gray, who signed an extension yesterday, 3 for 37. The 7 for 103 for Rice. Xavier Worthy did about what I would expect every game. He only saw 3 targets and had 1 carry, touched the ball 3 times. It's just every time he touches the ball, it's electric, and it helps if the defender completely leaves him uncovered because then
Right.
a wide open touchdown. I think that
was Marlon Humphrey was like, "Hey, nachos."
Yeah, so I think there will be better games for both Andrews and Kelce. I'm not panicking and dropping them, but it feels like there was a lot of consternation out there.
Yeah, they both were dominant in playing time. That is going to continue outside of an injury. I think the Chiefs like what they have in Noah Gray, but do we really believe that if Travis Kelce gets hurt, Noah Gray is going to slide right into that role?
We haven't seen it thus far. Isaiah Likely at least has slid into
right
Andrews' role.
Well, and on the Baltimore side, Baltimore has ran 2 tight ends since they drafted Hayden Hurst and Mark Andrews and had multiple tight ends be relevant. Just it's always been Mark Andrews as the number 1 guy. I think Isaiah Likely brings a little bit of athleticism to the position that the other tight ends hadn't. I mean, Andrews is a very good athlete. But if Jackson has to throw the ball to him, and like you said, we've talked about it with Marvin Harrison. We expect Marvin to start slow because teams are going to focus on him with 2 and 3 guys. As soon as McBride and Dortch and Wilson open up and make plays, it'll ease up on Harrison. It's the same thing with Mark Andrews. You're not going to see 3 guys on him if Isaiah Likely and Zay Flowers are putting up 15 catches. So,
yeah, I'm just thankful that the Chiefs found somebody to slide into that Kadarius Toney role, and I didn't know it would be Juju, but they have to have somebody to drop a crucial touchdown pass.
So let me ask you this: so on that last drive, the first throw to Likely was a difficult throw. There was some pressure, so I'm going to give him grace there.
And he got hurt.
Flowers. Do you think Jackson expected Flowers to sit down in the middle of the zone instead of keep moving? Is that why the throw was so far behind him?
I think he just missed.
Yeah.
They were talking about a little bit on NFL radio, and if you watched, I mean, Jackson has improved as a passer, but I don't know if he's ever going to be an elite passer with that manages to hit a lot of great tight windows in traffic places down there. I mean, that third pass was dead on and where it needed to be, and probably should have been a touchdown. The second one, I think he missed. The first one, he tried to give him a chance, but he wasn't really open. He was under duress. So there was a lot of talk that, he missed, 3 really bad throws. I don't think that's true. I think he missed one, but everybody misses one every once in a while.
Yeah. I'm going to give him a little bit of a pass. I think he played pretty well. But
Mahomes missed one on that interception. God knows where he was throwing it. It's like a duck ball that left his hand, and he missed one where Samaje Perine was coming wide open. Might have been a touchdown, but sure would have been a first down, just an easy wide open that he put way too far out in front. It's their first game. These guys have not played a lot of snaps, and we talk about a lot the defense and the struggle for defense. Who had played maybe 15 or 20 snaps, and now they're trying to play 60, 80, 90. I know offense has the ball and is moving the ball, but Lamar Jackson didn't play it much in the preseason either. And he was calling his own number on a lot of runs, and he was throwing a lot of passes, and they were out there. I mean, it's not shocking that they would have a few things off. We've talked more and more this first week, and even the second week is more like what the old third and fourth preseason games used to be then.
Yeah. 2 weeks is going to be like the thing I'm upset about. I picked the Ravens. So I was, when it looked like they had scored to tie it or to go one down and they were going to go for 2, I was like, yeah, I'm going to get my win. But I didn't.
Here is your chance to make up some ground on me. I did pick the Chiefs, so I started out 1-0. We'll see how it lasts. Let's dive into the rest of the week 1 preview, and that starts with our first Friday game in Sao Paulo, Brazil. The Green Bay Packers at the Philadelphia Eagles. Dennis, Josh Jacobs is in. He should get plenty of run. Emmanuel Wilson is dinged up and questionable. They have already just recently ruled Marshawn Lloyd inactive. They did pull back up from the practice squad, but I expect a lot of run for Josh Jacobs. How do you think he's going to fare in his Packers debut?
I think he's going to be just fine. I mean, we've expected Josh Jacobs is a bell cow back. I don't think he's going to get the 340 carries that he got in 2022. But I think he could push for the 273 carries he had in 2020, probably more in the realm of 250, which would be his third highest carry season. But he's a decent all-around back. He can catch the ball a little bit. So if they don't have great backups, they're going to lean on him. That's what he wanted. That's what he felt like Gruden should have been doing with him. And Gruden kept trying to make it a 60-40 split with somebody else taking all the passing game. Is Jacobs Christian McCaffrey in the passing game? No. But he's not Derrick Henry either. So he's somewhere in the middle. So he'll be out there. He's going to play a ton of snaps. It's early in the season. He's a pretty tough dude. So I think he's going to get a heavy workload. And a lot of what it's going to come down to is what kind of step does that passing game take in year 2 under Jordan Love with these second-year receivers? Are they going to step up? Are they going to be consistent? Are they going to pull defenders away from the line because they make plays and give Jacobs some room to operate? Or is he going to be going against stack boxes?
And I would expect a little bit of rest for both of these teams. Neither of these teams played. Packers didn't play anyone that I think made their 53-man roster except for Emmanuel Wilson in preseason. So, it'll take some settling in, I would assume. For the Eagles, 2 new coordinators, but Kellen Moore comes to the offense, brings Saquon Barkley with him. We always wondered what Dallas could have done with Saquon Barkley when Kellen Moore was there, and now we somewhat get to find out. What are you hoping to see from Kellen Moore in this offense on opening night?
So Kellen Moore's last 5 seasons, he's been at 58% passing or higher, 4 of them. There was one season, I think it was his last year in Dallas, it was a 53-47 split. But last year, 61-39.
That was
3
the
years
year
ago.
when he had that Pollard had his big breakout and Zeke was still going pretty good. I think they both finished as top 20 backs.
Yep. And 3 years ago, 59-41. 4 years, 61-39. And then his first year as the play caller, he had a 58 pass percent.
I also think that 2022, when he was closer, is the year that Dak missed 6 games and they had Cooper Rush.
Could be.
I'm going to look.
Very likely. So what I'm expecting, they have Saquon Barkley, who's a phenomenal pass catching back, A.J. Brown and Devonta Smith, who could both finish top 15 as wide receivers, and Dallas Goedert, who's a pretty good tight end. I think that their passing game is likely to take a little bit of a step up. Let me see. I'm not sure what their numbers were last year.
So just for clarification, 22 is the year that Dak got injured. When he was in there, he averaged about 240 passing yards per game. Cooper Rush started 5 games and played in a 6th, averaged 117 yards a game passing.
All right, and let me see here. So in last year, the Eagles were 21st in pass attempts. So do I expect them to be top 5? Probably not. But it wouldn't surprise me if they're in the top half and maybe even around 12th or 14th in pass attempts. Part of what I think they realized they need to do after last year, they need to be a little more judicious with Jalen Hurts in the running game. We get it. He's a phenomenal runner. He's a very powerful runner. But we saw last year he got banged up, and while he wasn't hurt enough to miss games, it hampered what he could do. I think Saquon Barkley will offset that some. And like I said, they have 2 top-notch wide receivers.
Who are you picking in tonight's game? I'm taking the Eagles.
Fly, Eagles, fly.
And that'll bring us to our Sunday games. That kicks off with the Pittsburgh Steelers at the Atlanta Falcons. Dennis, for Pittsburgh, Russell Wilson was named the starter, cropped up on the injury report, is officially listed as questionable. If he plays, how are you feeling about him? If not, would you be more interested in Justin Fields?
Well, definitely more interested in Justin Fields if he starts. I mean,
more interested than you'd be if Russell Wilson is the starter. In terms of playing a Pittsburgh starter.
To me, these 2 guys are, both of them, I'm going to approach this from a dynasty perspective. These are guys who, if I'm tanking, I'm rebuilding and I'm looking, these are guys I'm going to go out and trade for because I just don't know what we're going to get. We've got Arthur Smith, who loves to run the ball. They only have 1 legitimate wide receiver at this point, and plus Pat Freiermuth. It's a situation that I'm just didn't Freiermuth. He just signed an extension today.
He's signing an extension. Yep. Roman Wilson was ruled out,
Yep.
but Jalen Warren, who a couple of weeks ago I was told would by no chance be available week 1, seems to be back in the game with Najee Harris. So I had Russell Wilson. I have him as a QB3, and I probably would have Justin Fields in that range too. I think they're going to try to run.
I think they are too. And if Fields is the starter, I'm probably more inclined to start him in my super flex spot than I would be Wilson because of Fields' rushing ability. The dude's 6'3" and 225 pounds, and he's fast. And he doesn't see the field great, so he takes the ball and runs with it. And to be fair, they don't have a ton of weapons there in Pittsburgh anyways, so that may be a match made in heaven. They could set up the wing T with maybe go in the wishbone, put Connor Hayward back there with Warren and Najee Harris.
They have somebody else too that they have as a big tight end, Darnell
Washington.
Yeah.
But I'm not hyped to start either one of them. Like I said, I'd be a little more interested in Fields because of his rushing ability. And even though Russell's a good athlete, if he's hampered by a calf, he's not going to run even as much as he might normally.
So we finally got our guys in Atlanta free. Kirk Cousins back, another player we didn't see much in the preseason. Curious and excited to see him make a start for Atlanta. Kyle Pitts was on the injury report mid-week, but he has come off. I am no longer showing him on the Falcons injury report, so he is good to go. So how are you feeling about Drake London and Kyle Pitts?
I'm optimistic. And it's the first year of a Zach Robinson coordinated offense after, the dark ages of Arthur Smith. And Kirk, we know Kirko is a good professional quarterback. Kirko knows to get the ball to his good guys. He did it last year with Hockenson and Jefferson. Plus he's got Bijan Robinson. This could be a very, very explosive offense. And then you add Darnell Mooney's speed over the top, which he could be a real weapon there. They've got depth at running back with Tyler Algier. It's a team that could potentially put up a bunch of points. How's the offensive line going to hold up? And hopefully the defense.
They actually have invested quite a bit in their offensive line in the last couple of years.
And hopefully the defense doesn't all of a sudden get really good. So they're winning, 17-14 games instead of 37-34 games.
I don't know. Atlanta probably take a win as a win. I am taking the Falcons to get that win.
As am I.
Next up, we have the Arizona Cardinals at the Buffalo Bills. We know James Conner is the starter in Arizona, but they picked up an intriguing rookie in Trey Benson. What do you expect to see from those two guys in week one?
So Jonathan Gannon has said that as long as James Conner is healthy, he's the bell cow. He's going to get the ball. He averaged 18 and a half opportunities per game last year when he was healthy. 16 carries, 2.5 targets. He's probably a little bit better pass catcher than that, but they did have a couple guys in Emari DeMarcado and Michael Carter. And there was somebody else there, I forget now, but that could catch the ball a little bit. So, and then Connor did get banged up last year as well, as evidenced by missing 4 games. So, well, I think the tendency is going to want to be to say, hey, run this big bull running back and let's grind people down. Kyler wants to get that 4,000-yard monkey off his back. He's got a brand new toy in Marvin Harrison Jr. 5 games from now, Zay Jones will be getting back, and he brings a certain element to the game. Michael Wilson has flashed a little bit, but again, those injury issues that plagued him in college have popped up. And whenever Greg Dortch gets a chance, he just seems to produce. So now Dortch is the starter. He's in the slot. And we saw last year Trey McBride just get flooded with targets and produced. McBride was the clear tight end 1 in his class coming out. He went in. He was sitting behind Zach Ertz. Ertz got injured. McBride took over. They didn't miss a beat when it came to volume at the tight end position, to the point where they said, hey, Zach, we're going to do you a favor and let you go find yourself another job. But Marvin, I could see Marvin with 150 or 160 targets. Once the other receivers step up and loosen up, it will help Marvin and it'll help Connor because it'll get the safety back off the line. Maybe the weak side linebacker will back off a little bit and give Connor a little more room. So I'm going to treat James Conner like I'm going to treat Kyron Williams. I'm going to ride them until they break.
So what I hear you saying is we're playing James Conner week 1, and then week 2 it'll be Trey Benson time. So.
Yeah, I mean, if you were able to handcuff Benson to Connor, that was a beautiful move, because I do think Connor misses time. That's just what he does.
I also think it's going to be a legendary game with Marvin getting 150 targets in week 1.
Don't be ridiculous.
For Buffalo, we know who's running the ball. We're going to be James Cook and Josh Allen. But the bigger question has been, what are we doing with the wide receivers? They got rid of Diggs and Gabe Davis. They still have Khalil Shakir, brought in Curtis Samuel, brought in Keon Coleman. All those guys are off the injury report and seemingly ready to go. So if you had to put your money on one of them, who are you putting your money on in week one?
I am going with Khalil Shakir. I mean, I don't want any of them higher than a flex right now. I want to see how it shakes out. Buffalo was in the middle of the pack in pass attempts last year, throwing it 539 times. So they're going to run the ball. They drafted Ray Davis to help the run game. James Cook showed himself to be a good runner. I think he had 200 carries last year, thereabouts. I think it'll be that again. They like Ty Johnson, who they brought back. So I think Ty is their like big back. Ray Davis, friend of the show, while he's not tall at 5'8", he's over 200 pounds, which is more than I can say for Kyron Williams. So he does run with some power, and he's a good all-around back. So they have weapons there. But Khalil Shakir has flashed in preseason and training camp. He's the guy that's really stepped up and has kind of taken control. I like Keon Coleman. I liken him to potentially having a Kelvin Benjamin kind of rookie season, in part because there's just no other big receiver there. They've got Dalton Kincaid at tight end, but they don't have anybody outside unless they move Kincaid outside. But I do think Coleman isn't going to, eat his way to tight end by the end of the season. And Curtis Samuel, he's a guy I think could have some fairly consistent flex appeal because he can run the ball as well. He played running back at Ohio State as well as wide receiver. He can work in the short areas, and he's got good speed as well. Again, he's a smaller guy, 5'10", 5'11", so he isn't one of these real big wide receivers. And his thing is, much like Michael Wilson, has been injuries. When he's healthy, he looks good. He's had some good seasons in Carolina, a good season in Washington. Now let's see, can he put it together now that he's been given an opportunity in Buffalo? Again, I would rank them probably Shakir, pretty big gap, Coleman and Samuel real close together, but all as a high-end flex and low-end flexes.
Yeah, that's kind of where I have him too. I went back and looked at my rankings for the week, and I had Shakir the highest, just a kind of a low-end wide receiver 4. I'm taking the Bills in this game.
Circle the wagons.
Next up, we have the Tennessee Titans at the Chicago Bears. Kind of a big season for Will Levis as the franchise starter. What do you expect to see from him week one on the road against a pretty decent defense?
So let me look at Levis's. I had his game log up earlier. He
only had one real good game.
He came out hot in his first game, and I think a lot of people were like, oh my God, we were wrong. Everybody go get a jar of mayonnaise and chow down. 4 touchdowns, 238 yards on 19 of 29 passing. So it was a little bit of fool's gold. You're not often going to get 4 touchdowns on 29 pass attempts. The next week, he had 39 pass attempts and 1 touchdown, but only a 56% completion rate. He ended the year with just a 58.43% completion rate. So he has to get that up. He's got Calvin Ridley, DeAndre Hopkins. They brought in who? Tyler Boyd. So they have a professional group of wide receivers with a little bit with a touch of high end to them. DeAndre's getting old. Calvin's getting old.
Knee injury. He's still questionable, but he hasn't been really practicing or available for the last month.
So, and then their running backs they've admitted, hey, we have 2 fairly identical running backs. We're just going to put in, we're not changing the game plan for whichever one is in there. If you're in there, you're in there, and we're going to run the plays. And then they got Chico Okonkwo at tight end, who's a pretty athletic guy, but I don't think he's ever going to really reach the potential, fantasy potential anyways, that we've seen flashed on any kind of consistent basis. So what I'm looking for from Levis, he's a good athlete. He can run a little bit. He's got a big arm. He needs to really hone in and get that completion percentage up above 63%. If he can do that, he can be a low-end QB2 some weeks. He'd be more of he's probably a streamer guy as a super flex is where I'd be looking at him, and I'd be nervous about it. But if he can get his percentage up, maybe have a positive touchdown to interception ratio, show growth, and then let's see what happens going into year 3.
For the Chicago Bears, we've talked a lot about their passing game this offseason, but they added DeAndre Swift. They still have Khalil Herbert and Roschon Johnson. Johnson seeming like he's most likely the third option in that group. But how are you feeling about the backfield rotation going into week 1?
I think we're going to see a healthy dose of DeAndre Swift. And Khalil Herbert, who has flashed a little bit, will be the change of pace back. I've always liked Herbert, but I don't think he has shown that he can hold up. Much like Swift has shown, he can't really hold up to a huge workload. So it feels like it's going to be, Swift for 2 series, Herbert for 1. Swift for a series, Herbert for 1. Swift for 2 series, Roschon for 1. Herbert for 2 series, Swift close out the game kind of thing. So if I had to start one of these guys all season long, it's going to be DeAndre Swift. We'll see if Roschon can get some of that pass catching magic that, he had at Texas. If he does, he may be able to cut into some playing time on clear passing downs. He's a better pass catcher than Herbert, but Herbert has, every chance he's had, he's provided explosiveness that other backs there didn't. Again, it was Deontay Foreman and Roschon Johnson, and Travis Homer. So it wasn't like, he had a lot of competition to provide explosiveness. But I think Swift is a good enough back that he'll probably lead the way with about 65% of the touches and snaps.
Yeah, I ranked him as a low-end RB2 this week. I am taking the Bears.
So am I.
Next up, we have the New England Patriots at the Cincinnati Bengals, which is shaping up to possibly be the one game you want to miss in week 1 unless you are a diehard fan. Beyond Ramondre Stevenson, who I'm sure you're starting with the Jacoby Brissett era in place in a tough road game, is there any Patriot that sparks your interest?
Well, Hunter Henry is, I know he's been dinged up a little bit, I think.
Unglamorous tight end too.
But he has touchdown upside. And depending on what you're doing at the tight end, he could be a guy that just shows up for you and gets you, 8 to 10 points a week in a tight end premium league, with, 3 catches and 40 yards and the occasional touchdown here. Pop Douglas was the guy that popped off last year, pun intended. I don't know if that holds up this year. It seems like they like him in the slot. It's really wait and see with that wide receiver core. They've got Kendrick Bourne on the PUP list, and Tyquan Thornton's been getting play. Jalen Polk has been getting play. Kayshon Boutte actually looked decent in preseason. So we'll see if he got his head out of his butt and has figured out how to be an NFL wide receiver. If he does at 5'11" and 200 pounds with okay speed, Boutte could be a surprise guy. He was very highly ranked going into college, had a real good year or two, and then he kind of fizzled, got a little full of himself. But I could see Polk and Boutte and Pop Douglas rounding into a decent pass catching group. I just don't know that having Jacoby Brissett as the quarterback matters.
Yeah, Douglas was the one I had ranked highest, but other than Stevenson, there is no Patriot in a week where you have pretty much all your options available that I'm playing. For the Bengals, Jamar Chase said it's up to him, and he'll decide whether he wants to play without a new contract. Officially listed as questionable. T. Higgins downgraded to doubtful. If you have these two guys, what are you doing?
Well, reports about Jermaine Burton have not been great. He's made some plays, but it turns out he's quite the off-field headache. So he's listed as Chase's direct backup. If Chase is out, are they going to slot him in, or are they going to swing over to Trenton Irwin? If Higgins is also out, are they going to pop Andre Yosevich out to the outside and put Charlie Jones in the slot? Great questions, Dennis. They've got, let's see, on the practice squad, some cat named Shedrick Jackson, Kendrick Pryor, and Cole Burgess. So it isn't like they have some fancy guys on the practice squad. I would think that it ends up, if they lose those top two wide receivers, we may see an awful lot of Drew Sample, Tanner Hudson, and Trenton Irwin.
And Mike Gesicki.
Yeah, but he'll play the tight end position. So he's listed as the starter. We're going to see him anyways.
Yeah, I went and took T. Higgins out of all my lineups because downgrading him to doubtful, I doubt seriously he's playing. Chase, I'm leaving in there, but you got to watch. Fortunately, it's an early window game on Sunday. If he plays, I'm still playing him, but if he doesn't play, there's probably not a Bengal that I'm throwing in there that's not named Joe Burrow or Moss or Brown. I'm still picking the Bengals, though.
So am I.
That brings us a battle of the South. The Houston Texans at the Indianapolis Colts. The Houston Texans have an embarrassment of riches at wide receiver. Nico Collins, Stephon Diggs, Tank Dell. Who do you believe in the most in week one?
I believe in Nico Collins. I'm kind of out on Stephon Diggs. I know that ADPs leading into the season have had Diggs and Collins pretty close together with Tank Dell, a round and a half, 2 rounds behind him. So there's a lot of belief in CJ Stroud. I just feel like Diggs is, he's turning into that head case again. He did it in Minnesota and he got himself traded. He clearly did it in Buffalo because they were like, yeah, we're gone. You're out. We're going to send you away. And then Houston was like, yeah, we'll take him. Oh, by the way, we're going to move all your money to the first year. And if you're a pain in our butt, we're just going to be done with you. So I think, to me, I like the way Collins stepped up last year. He showed that he's an alpha wide receiver in very much the classic sense that we were used to, as in good wide receiver comes into the league, has to work his way up through the depth chart over his first couple seasons. Late second year, third year, he has a big breakout, and now he's an established guy. That's where I feel like we are with Nico Collins. I think he's got a real good connection with CJ Stroud. I think Tank Dell has a great connection with CJ Stroud. And I think I'd want both of them over Stephon Diggs.
Yeah, I had Collins in wide receiver 2 range. I had Dell next and then Diggs, but I had them both in wide receiver 3 range, but we will see. First week will be kind of crucial. Anthony Richardson, healthy, did actually play a lot of preseason, but we saw some ups and downs, probably almost a do-over on the rookie year based on how little he got to play last year. Not an easy matchup, even though they're at home. What are you expecting from Richardson?
I expect inconsistent passing with some big plays. I mean, he's got a big play wide receiver and Michael Pittman. He's got a big play wide receiver and Adonai Mitchell. Josh Downs is going to be out, so Alec Pierce with his speed will be there on the outside. Do they even roster a tight end? And then you've got Jonathan Taylor.
They roster like 95 tight ends, but none of them are worth playing for you.
So he's going to be inconsistent, and he's going to make up for it with the running game. So I like what he brings to the table as far as being able to score fantasy points. I mean, dude's 6'5" and 235 pounds. He's going to deliver, but there are going to be some games that where you look and you're like, man, he went 13 for 34 with 140 yards passing and no touchdowns. Oh, but he rushed for 78 yards and 2 touchdowns.
I am taking the Texans.
I'm going to take the Colts at home, man, week 1.
Next, we have a battle for Florida, the Jacksonville Jaguars at the Miami Dolphins. Jaguars, another team that turned over their receivers. Christian Kirk is still there. They added Gabe Davis and Brian Thomas. Which receiver do you trust most in week 1?
I'm going to lean on Christian Kirk. He's the guy there. And as long as he can play that slot position with the occasional outside route, he's going to keep producing for Trevor Lawrence. I mean, we know who Gabe Davis is. He's going to get his opportunities. He's going to run a lot of routes. He's going to run a lot of wind sprints. And he may have some games where he just racks up a bunch of points. I love the optimism around Brian Thomas Jr. Let's see how it plays out. How does he settle in? I think he's in a good situation with Trevor Lawrence and that Jacksonville team.
Yeah, Kirk was the one I liked too. He was the one I had ranked the highest. For Miami, we saw some great things from both Devon Achane and Raheem Mostert last year. They also have Jalen Wright that kept Jeff Wilson. What do you expect from that Miami running back rotation?
I think Raheem Mostert's going to start. Achane is going to sprinkle in with the change of pace and get some full series. And I expect Jalen Wright will get a couple series a game. And then if somebody just gets super hot, Mike McDaniel's going to keep him in there. Doesn't matter which one it is. If on the 5th series of the game, Jalen Wright just starts tearing off big chunks and they go down and score, I fully expect he'll be back out there the next time. If Jalen Wright on the 5th series of the game, rushes 3 times for 7 yards over a 6-play series and they punt, I expect we'll see Jalen Wright again in about 4 or 5 series.
I am taking the Dolphins in this one.
So am I.
Next up, we have the Carolina Panthers at the New Orleans Saints. Probably not the most glamorous week 1 matchup. New coach, new wide receiver 1 for Bryce Young. What are you hoping to see from him in week 1 of year 2?
So I think he'll be kind of mid this year, which will be a big improvement over last year. He needs to improve on that 59.8% completion rate and 11 to 10 touchdown ratio. Last year under Canales, Baker was 64.3 completion percentage with 28 touchdowns and 10 interceptions. But the Bucs were bottom 8 in pass attempts. And the Panthers went out and got 2 big old run blocking guards to add to that offensive line. So I think Chuba Hubbard is going to get a lot of opportunity to run the ball and be productive there. And I like Adam Thielen. I think Xavier Legette's kind of rusty. We'll have to see what happens with Jonathan Mingo. Is he going to take a second-year leap and start to make some plays? But Deontay Johnson is the receiver I want to roster there. I think he ends up leading the team in targets, catches, and fantasy points. I'm just concerned that it's going to not be, a lot. It'll be more of a wide receiver, low-end wide receiver 3 kind of year.
So, I think the best, if you were a Carolina fan, that you would be hoping for is something similar to what happened to Trevor Lawrence, another pretty highly prized number 1 overall pick who, for wholly different reasons than Young, did not have a good coach situation his first year. He completed less than 60% of his passes. He had more turnovers than touchdowns, took a lot of sacks. Getting a better coach, a better system, better infrastructure, he raised up to 66% completion percentage, cut down way back on the turnovers, took fewer sacks, and like you said, kind of became a respectable QB2. That would be, I think if you're a Panther fan, that would be a good sign of progress for Bryce Young. On the other side, Probably starting Alvin Kamara and Chris Olave. Any other Saint that tempts you in a full week one?
I'm okay flexing Rashid Shaheed. He's going to get 5 or 6 targets. We've seen the explosiveness that he provides. And if you're in a kick return points league, Shaheed might give you a little bit of boost there.
I am taking the Saints in this one.
I'm going to go with Carolina.
We're definitely going to be different in our record.
I'll be honest. I went back to my preseason thing. I checked and I got the 2024 season, all of my playoff predictor stuff, and I picked all of my teams that I picked in that for week one. Now, as we move on, there will be things that change because of injuries and how teams start to look. But week one, I'm going with my picks that I made.
Next up, we have the Minnesota Vikings at the New York Giants. Sam Darnold, now the man, the starter there. What are you hoping to see from him in week one? Pretty frisky Giants defense.
Man, I don't know.
It's the right answer.
Darnold came out in Carolina his first year there, and those first 4 games looked like he was going to redeem himself. Then he got his bell rung and just completely fell apart. I think that was the I'm seeing ghost seasons, or maybe that was in New York still even.
No, seeing ghosts was in New York, and actually that was ended up being his best season.
They've got Justin Jefferson. They've got Aaron Jones. They've got Jordan Addison. I think Addison's on the injury report.
Yeah, he's good to go, though. He's not going to miss.
They've got Johnny Munt. So his job. He's
not on the injury report anymore. He's good to go.
His job is to get the ball to Justin Jefferson and Jordan Addison and Aaron Jones, and I think he can do that. He's going to make some bad plays. That's just who Sam Darnold is. Unfortunately, with McCarthy tearing his meniscus, now he's out for the year. I do think Darnold can hold off Nick Mullins. But at some point this season, Darnold is going to melt down. I just don't think it's going to be in week one.
Probably not. For the Giants, I assume you're playing Singletary, definitely going to be playing Malik Neighbors. How are you feeling about Daniel Jones? Anyone else you're considering playing from the Giants?
So it's going to come down to Daniel Jones's efficiency. Dude is a turnover machine. Fumbles, interception. It's just that's his thing. But in order, the guys I've got my eye on are Wan'Dale Robinson, then Daniel Bellinger, Jalen Hyatt, and Darius Slayton. Can Hyatt make the move past Slayton? Slayton is just chubby. Jalen Hyatt. They run fly routes. That's what they do. Wan'Dale, he's the short guy, going to run this out of the slot. If he can stay healthy, he could be productive. Bellinger flashed a little bit his rookie year. Then they brought in Darren Waller. Can he kind of take a step now going into year 3? So there's some opportunity there, but it really is going to depend on Daniel Jones. Because Danny DeVito ain't the answer.
Yeah, and that was their big kind of gamble. I am taking the Giants this week.
So am I.
On to Sunday afternoon games, Las Vegas Raiders at the Los Angeles Chargers. How are you feeling about Zamir White in week one?
So it sure sounds like he's going to get the opportunity to be the bell cow back. My big concerns were with him are
Alexander Madison. I would also give Zamir White the chance to be the bell cow back.
The issue with Zamir White is, while he's maybe capable is the right word as a pass catcher, the guy's got tinier hands than Donald Trump. And, can he make up? Can he hold on to the ball? Can he get out there and play well? He led Jackie to a championship last year. She picked him up on waivers and rode him to the title. So I agree with you that, Madison's a jag and not in the Jacksonville sense of the word. And if Madison starts getting work, then we may see some more Amir Abdullah in the passing game. And that's because Zamir, if he's not running the ball well, they'll start handing it to Madison. Then it becomes a complete cluster. Well, I'm early in the season. I'm going to ride Zamir White.
Yeah, I still have decently high hopes for him as well. For the Chargers, DJ Chark has been ruled out, but they still have a bunch of other options. They have Palmer, Quentin Johnson, Lad McConkey, Justin Herbert coming back. Missed most of camp and did not play in the preseason because he had a plantar fascia injury. Supposedly that has healed up. We know we're going to see Gus Edwards, J.K. Dobbins. Brand new era for the Chargers. What do you expect from that offense?
It feels like a gross misuse of Justin Herbert to put him in a Greg Roman offense. But he's in a Greg Roman offense. So I think they're going to be run heavy, and with Roman there, and Harbaugh likes to run the ball too. They let all their top wide receivers go. And my concern is that, Harbaugh, he loves to rally the us versus them and that rah-rah. I think and when you first get someplace, I think you can pull that off. I think if he's 5 years in, we saw him wear out his welcome in San Francisco with that. So right now, I'm okay. And I think he can get the most out of that no-name receiving group. Joshua Palmer has stepped up when given an opportunity. Quentin Johnston has not. And Lad McConkey is very highly thought of. They let my guy Parham go at tight end. So I don't even know who their tight end is. Is it Disley or Colby?
They have Disley. They have Hayden Hurst.
Stone Smart.
They have Stone Smart.
I think that they'll be able to rally around Justin Herbert. It'll just come down to can they make plays in the passing game for Herbert with those, also rans at wide receiver.
Yeah, I don't know why, but I'm taking the Chargers. I think this is going to be a low-scoring, ugly game.
I picked the Chargers too.
This might be the kind of game where you'd be happy if you had these guys in the IDP. I am actually going to start Max Crosby. So. Next up, the Denver Broncos at the Seattle Seahawks. Bo Nix, the hand-picked heir apparent in Denver for Sean Payton. How are you feeling about him week one?
I love Beau Breeze. He seems made for the Sean Payton offense based on how Drew Brees ran the Sean Payton offense. So he had a lot of college pass attempts at or behind the line of scrimmage. Brees wasn't known for having a big arm and going down the field. I love that Payton went with him early and said, hey, this is my guy, and we're going to roll with him, and we're going to grow with him, and we're going to put people around him. The best thing he has going for him is 61 college starts, the most college starts ever. And we've seen with Brock Purdy, and I know it's not fair to compare the last pick in the draft to a first-round draft pick, but there's merit to starting 40 or 50 college games if you're not like one of these immensely gifted athletes at the quarterback position. If what is going to make you successful is diagnosing and making fast decisions and getting the ball to the right place, there's no substitute for getting reps. And when you play 61 games in college, you got a lot of reps.
Yeah, I'm cautiously optimistic. I have him as a low-end QB2. For Seattle, JSN, we were very excited about him coming out of college. Seemed to be relegated to a real weird role last year. New offensive coordinator. Been a lot of hype this year. How are you feeling going into week one?
Well, I think for the year, I think his ceiling is a kind of a mid to high end wide receiver 3, and that would include Lockett falling from where he was last year. He's probably a wide receiver 4, but I'm going to defer to you as the Denver Broncos expert. How is the Denver Broncos slot game against, guys like JSN.
We have one really good corner, and I imagine he'll be on Metcalf.
Okay. So it might be a good week to start JSN.
Yeah, I think I was going to look. I'm pretty sure I have JSN kind of in wide receiver 3, high-end wide receiver 3 range. So, but I am actually taking the Broncos in this game.
Rolling with the Seahawks.
That's probably the wiser choice, but I don't know. Somehow the last few games I went from thinking they were the worst team in football to cautiously thinking we could win 6.
You're telling me there's a chance.
Next up, Dallas Cowboys at the Cleveland Browns. 2 train wrecks meeting in Ohio this week. CeeDee Lamb is still on the non-football injury list. Mike McCarthy said he's working up to possibly be ready Sunday. There's no way he's not playing, right?
I got to believe it. I mean, not just because I drafted him and Jamar Chase in the first and second round.
That would suck for you so much if both those guys are week 1.
It's only week 1, man. You don't.
I know, but that's still kind of like.
So, what I think. I think Lamb plays. What I think also is that he's not going to play a full complement of snaps, but when he's in there, he's the target. They're going to throw the ball to him. That's who he is and what they do, and so. Well, he may go from playing his usual 90%, 95% of the snaps to 75% of the snaps. You can bet he's still going to get the top percentage of the targets.
Meanwhile, on the other side, Deshaun Watson has struggled with some arm soreness. We know that they have Jerome Ford in the backfield. What do you think this offense is going to look like for Cleveland against a decent defense in Dallas?
I honestly, I don't have any idea because Watson has just never rebounded. I love Amari Cooper. He's one of the most underappreciated wide receivers and fantasy assets in the league. Jerry Jeudy flashes, but he's got hands issues. Elijah Moore didn't produce, I think, like a lot of Browns fans thought he would when he came over from the Jets. But those are their top 3 receivers. With no Nick Chubb, the backfield is Jerome Ford, Pierre Strong, and Deontay Foreman. That's a hard hat group. Well, Ford had a decent year last year. He wasn't super efficient in the run game. He's probably more suited to be the passing down back. But I don't know that Pierre Strong isn't necessarily suited to be the lead back on the ground either. And as much as I love Deontay Foreman, if you're starting him, you're probably not Super Bowl bound. So
the other tough thing, I think, for the Browns, Jedrick Wills has been ruled out. Jack Conklin, the other tackle, is a game-time decision.
Yeah.
I am actually taking the Cowboys in this one.
I should switch this pick, but I'm sticking with the Browns, which is what I picked when I did it.
You got to go with your team, too. I mean, this to me feels like another pick'em game, and I think this, despite the fact that we like some of these pieces for fantasy, could be another potentially ugly game.
Both teams have really good defenses, so
they do indeed. Washington Commanders at the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, kind of a frisky, interesting matchup. We know Terry McLaurin is wide receiver 1. You're definitely playing him for Washington. A lot of mystery with any other pass catchers, including tight ends, receivers. Is there anyone aside from McLaurin that interests you?
So I don't know that there's – all right, looks like they moved Luke McCaffrey up to the starting wide receiver on the outside. So it's Olamide Zaccheaus.
Washington's official depth chart that they released lists Luke McCaffrey as their starter outside. So I know none of us wanted to believe that. And I thought Jaden Daniels had good chemistry with De'Ami Brown. I thought that was actually part of the reason they moved on from Dotson. But McCaffrey we're not in those practices, and God only knows what goes on.
Yeah. I think, I'm comfortable starting Zach Ertz. I just think, he's not going to get you a ton of yards per catch, but he's going to get open and he's going to catch the ball. And if he gets 10 or 12 targets, he'll get you, if you give him 10 targets, he's going to get you 65 yards and maybe a touchdown. And that's a good workmanlike day. It'll be interesting to see how the McCaffrey-Brown thing shakes out in live action. Jaden Daniels has a good arm. He can get the ball down the field. He's very mobile, takes a lot of unnecessary hits. So I'm with Marcus Mariota banged up and out this week. I'm not looking forward to the Jeff Driscoll experience. So I think you roll McCarthy or McLaurin, excuse me, and the rest of the receivers. I think you put them in wait and see mode.
For the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, last year, great chemistry between Baker and Mike Evans. Evans looked incredible, ended up a top 10 finish. Do you think he can pick up where he left off against a team that was somewhat suspect in the back end of the defense in 2023?
I'm thinking yes. And, it's one of those – it's like Mike Evans is the Derrick Henry of wide receivers. You know what he's going to do. Like he could literally walk up and tell you, I'm going to run this route. And it just doesn't matter. So he's going to run an intermediate route. He may break in, he might stop, he might break out, whatnot. But that's just what he's going to do. And at 6'5" and 230 pounds, he's never been known for running away from people.
I agree. I had him as wide receiver 7 this week.
I think he's going to go out there and he's going to do what he does. Now, my biggest concern is that, Liam Cohen coming from the Sean McVay tree, maybe not coming from, but spending a few years in LA with 1 year as the OC, decides that Chris Godwin is the Cooper Kupp guy. That does concern me a little bit. But in the 1 year that the Rams were that Cohen was the Rams OC, they were bottom third in the league in pass attempts.
I am taking the Buccaneers.
So am I.
We move on to Sunday Night Football, another playoff rematch. This time the Los Angeles Rams at the Detroit Lions. Dennis, we got the reports that Kyren Williams would be returning punts. Now it turns out Blake Corum is going to be returning kicks. What is going on with this Rams backfield?
You want to get your best players the ball no matter what. You can't make plays from the bench, right? So, they're going to roll out Kyren Williams. He's going to start. I fully expect Tutu Atwell to field some punts. I don't think Williams is going to take all the punts. It wouldn't surprise me if Corum does take all the kickoffs because he's the backup. I think we're going to get a generous serving of Kyren Williams with Blake Corum spelling him. And, if for some reason Corum gets unbelievably hot, I think McVay would roll with him. But I think we're going to see Kyren Williams with 65% of the touches, a couple punt returns, and Blake Corum doing the kickoff returning and getting 35%.
Meanwhile, for your Detroit Lions, Jahmyr Gibbs, 100% off the injury report. Is it wheels up?
I think so. I feel a whole lot better with Aaron Donald retired than I did before. So,
slow clap.
I also on the plus side for the Lions, the Rams are starting 2 rookies in their front 7. So they've got some inexperience. Braden Fisk is, highly regarded rookie playing at the defensive tackle. And then I think Dallas Turner is the other guy. Jared Verse is the other guy playing at outside linebacker. So, Verse is going to mostly rush the passer. Fisk is going to be closer to the Aaron Donald role. But let's face it, he's not Aaron Donald. At least not yet.
It's going to take some time for this younger defense, I think, to probably put itself
and the Lions, they've got, well, maybe not a really deep stable of weapons. You've got Gibbs, Amon-Ra St. Brown, David Montgomery, Sam Laporta, and Jamison Williams. They have weapons, so they can beat you in a number of ways. So I like what they're bringing to the table this year.
I am taking the Detroit Lions.
One pride, baby.
Yeah, I mean, I picked them to win the Super Bowl, so you got to start somewhere, right? The Monday night football game is the New York Jets, second year in a row with Aaron Rodgers. As the Jets gets to go on Monday Night Football, he's really hoping it turns out a little bit better this time at the San Francisco 49ers. And it looks like the 49ers should have all of their players available and ready to go, but we will start with the Jets. Aaron Rodgers only 4 snaps last year. We did not see him complete a pass. He has not had great luck with San Francisco, particularly in San Francisco, even in his time with Green Bay. What are you expecting in Monday night?
You know, the Niners are going to put pressure on him, and you know they've got a pretty stout defense. So for me, it's going to come down. You know, we've seen Rodgers the last several years. He gets rid of the ball quick. He does his best to avoid sacks. He throws the ball away instead of, you know, taking big chances. But he's got Breece Hall and he's got Garrett Wilson. We've seen how he can perform with a stud wide receiver. I don't have any issues about Garrett Wilson being productive even against San Francisco. I like it to be a competitive game. I just don't know that Rodgers is going to be able to get him across the finish line to a victory. After, you know, he's going to be rusty. Game situation is going to put a little more pressure on that rebuilt Achilles than practices and scrimmages. So I think he'll be fine. I think Garrett Wilson and Breece Hall, Tyler Conklin, you know, they'll play good. I just don't know that it's going to be a situation where, you know, he throws for 350 yards.
Yeah, actually, you know, I think Rodgers will have a decent season. I picked him, obviously, as my comeback player of the year, but I don't know that he's going to be incredible on night one in San Francisco. I have him as a low-end QB2 this week. For the San Francisco 49ers, you know, Brandon Ayuk was a little bit took a little bit of time, got his contract all set. He's expected to play. So is Debo. So is Kittle. Decent secondary here for the Jets. The Jets also have a pretty good defense. What are you expecting from these receivers?
So, you know, they got Sauce Gardner and I forget who the other cornerback is, but they've got probably one of the best duos, if not the best duo of cornerbacks in the NFL. Stout defense all the way along. It comes down to
DJ Reed on one side and Sauce Gardner. And
Michael
Carter, too, is their nickelback.
Who is?
Michael Carter.
Okay. Oh, they just signed him to an extension. It comes down to whether Purdy picks the right guy. Somebody's going to be open. Can Purdy pick out which guy it's going to be? The Jets were 13th versus tight ends in fantasy points in 23, which is better than, you know, wide receivers, which they gave up the fewest fantasy points to wide receivers last year. But they also gave up the 13th most receptions to running backs and the 7th most fantasy points to running backs. So they are susceptible to Christian McCaffrey. So it could be a McCaffrey-Kittle game, and then that may open it up for Purdy to take shots with Ayuk and Debo Samuel.
I am taking the 49ers in this game.
So am I.
Well, that'll bring us to a close for week one. Very excited. The game about to kick off here for a first Friday. Dennis, if people have a few lonely hours tomorrow while they're waiting for Sunday, what can they do to fill them?
They can go to their favorite podcast platform, hit that search button, find the Fantasy Football Roundtable podcast, hit that subscribe, hit that like, leave us a rating, leave us a review.
Well, we hope you enjoy week 1. We will be back on Tuesday with a full recap of all the action, probably a lot of heartbreak, and hopefully a few triumphs. Looking forward to a full week 1. Hope all of your fantasy teams and your real life teams do well, unless you're playing the Lions or the Broncos.
Shout out to Cole in the